This video is going to take a look at how to do the bouncing ball animation, and we're going to be exploring how to animate it through the lens of the 12 principles of animation as illustrated by Franks Thomas and Ollie Johnston. I think it's important that you guys take a deep look into researching the history of these guys and their book, The Illusion of Life. So let's just jump right into Maya and open up the rig that we created in the last video. Okay, so what I'm going to do is just create a very basic scene for our environment here. So I'm going to go to Create, Polygon Primitive, and I'm going to turn on Interactive Creation. And then go to Create, Polygon Primitive, Cube. And I'm just going to drag out sort of a diving board for our ball to come to kind of like roll off of and fall down. So I know we haven't covered that yet, but if we go to Create, Polygon Primitive, and then we go to Cube, the way to use that interactive creation is you just left click, drag out, and then it'll prompt you to drag up to set the height. All right, so I'm gonna hit spacebar, just go to my front view, and let's do show all here. And I'm gonna hit 6 so I can see my texture, and I'm just gonna bring this up. So let's do, that seems high enough. We'll do about 5 for the Y. And then I'm just gonna do modify freeze transformations and edit, delete by type. Where's that at? History, there we go. All right, let's hide our joints though. So I'm gonna go to show joints. And what I want to do is I don't want to have to keep selecting my sphere by accident. I only want to be able to select my NURB controllers, and I don't want to select my diving board. So I'm just going to go ahead and here, and I'm going to turn off this fourth option, which is select surface. And so now when I select my middle controller here, I can just move it into place somewhere up here. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and select the three NURB curves here, and I would like to key or set a locked position on the first frame. So I highlight all of these by just left clicking and dragging down, right clicking and hitting key selected. And what I'd like to do is have my sphere roll to the very edge and stay upright, and then as it rolls down it falls, and then we'll do maybe 2 bounces. So we're going to go all the way to frame 24, and I'm just going to select my middle circle here. Now if I have this checked on, this is my key select auto key, and I press W, what you'll notice is on the timeline here, it'll set a key. So now we're going from 1 to 24. You can see our ball moves. Now what I'd like to do is, it looks a little boring and static here. What I'm going to do is roll all the way to 24, and in the Z axis, I'm going to make it negative 360 degrees. Now you might not think you saw any change because it looks the same as frame 1, but when we press play here, and let's just go ahead and just sort of really zoom in on this 24. And another way of doing it is just play with the timeline, this timeline slider. So now when I press play, you can see our sphere is rotating. All right. And we're going to play with the positioning of these keys. So for now, 1 second is fine for rotating across. We also want to make sure that our timeline itself is set to 24. So let's go ahead and click this little Dunkin' Donuts guy. That's what I call him, but it's the animation preferences. It'll automatically take you to time slider, and you want to make sure your frame rate is on 24. Mine was automatically set to that. Playback speed is 24 frames times 1, and then we have 1 here, and then just hit save. And if you notice that you were on 30 and it kind of screwed up a little bit, just go back and just redo those steps. All right, I'm going to use this as my baseline for where the ball falls. So let's go ahead and extend this out to 48 frames here. All right, so now we have a little bit more give from 24 to 48. So what we're going to do is, so at 24 we roll to the edge, and actually let's go out to, let's really move this out to about 72 frames. And the values that I'm going to put in a little bit are a little bit, they're arbitrary, right? So because we're going to be going into something called a graph editor in a second to adjust this. So we get to 24 here, and I'm going to have it fall at an arc to maybe about here, right? We're going to assume this line here is, well, you know what? I'm going to go ahead and just quickly build out. So I'm going to go to create, polygon primitive, plane. And if you forgot how I was able to switch cameras so easily, if you hold spacebar down and you right click on the word Maya, you can, and I'm not releasing the mouse here, I can switch between front, I can go back to perspective, and that's sort of a nice nifty pro tip. Or you can keep going back and forth and hitting space and switching between these different values. All right, so now we have a ground plane. So I'm going to go ahead and do show and turn off grid for now. So we're not looking at the grid. So we're seeing more of that. And what actually gives us a pretty nice view is this turning on ambient occlusion. You can see it gives us a really nifty shadow underneath our ball. Okay, so we know at 24 our ball appears here. I'm going to go all the way to 72 now, and I'm going to set its final position. So let's go ahead and go to our front view. Select this here and go all the way to 72. Oops, and I'm going to move it down on the floor and shift it here. So let's say I want it to fall here and I want it to bounce twice. So we get this really nice rotation. On 24, I want to pull this up just a little bit. Oops, let's do 24. Just making sure we're up here still. So we're still rolling off that edge. Let's say it falls to, let's go to 36. We'll just kind of go at these half-second frames. It falls here. And then we'll go another half. The ball falls here. And I'm not really worried about the height just yet, even though I want it to be, let's see, let's bring him down here. And then one more before it falls into its pseudo resting position. We'll probably have it roll a little bit more. So now when we play this, see it rolls, it falls, it does this quick bounce. Now notice this is very mechanical. Well, there's a couple ways of looking at this. We want to go to My Classic now because we're working almost purely in animation, turn on animation. And you'll see that there's this weird curve system that appears down here. This is called the graph editor. And if I select just that middle circle and I look at just the Y value, you can see here that it's sort of showing us a curve or mapping out the way our ball falls and hits that zero line, that zero axis. So maybe a better way of looking at this is in the front view here. You can see it follows that trajectory. See that? So right off the bat, just so you can see that a little bit more, you can see how the connection a little bit more. Go ahead and select this and click this first line here, which is linear tangents, and you'll see it created these lines, these straight lines. And now when we play this, you can see it's very robotic and mechanical. We're sliding across this. It's at its high point here. Now, if I want this to be a little bit higher of a bounce, for example, if I click on this and I hold my middle mouse in and I pull this up, notice that it affects it inside the view. So now that ball, that bounce, goes a little bit higher. And I also say I want to maybe pull this back a little bit because that it's falling a little bit too close there. You can see I've actually shifted that key on the keyframe thing back an entire frame. So you can see the correlation. And these really should be stretched out a bit more. So let me pull this back. And these values again, you can have a little bit of fun with them, but we'll lock in definitive values in a little bit. All right, so that looks pretty good. Um, So in the next video, what we'll do is we'll go in and we'll start tweaking the bounce, and we'll talk a little bit about what does it mean and why is the first principle of animation squash and stretch, and we'll get into that in the next one.